93 Philadelphia. Always live on the free Odyssey app. Live and local with Kathy Barnette on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT.
Got my walking shoes on.
What's up, Pennsylvania? How y'all doing today? This is your girl, Kathy Barnette, hosting my very first show on the Kathy Barnette Show. I am your weekend host here at 1210 WPHT. So not only hello to Pennsylvania, but I know you're out there listening, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, most of the mid-Atlantic states and our nation. I am so excited. Listen, before we jump into what we're really going to be talking about today, I just wanted to do a quick spin around the world because sometimes we have the unfortunate habit of putting up blinders and just talking about what's going on here. But believe it or not, people, there's a really big world out there and they are moving and making moves. Here's what's on the tip of everyone's tongue outside of the United States right now. Is there a new disease outbreak in China? Because right now there are a number of viral videos that are popping up all over the place showing the hospitals in China being overflooded with people. Now, of course, kind of like what we saw with COVID-19, China is telling everyone there is nothing to see here. Shut up, sit down. Move along, people. There's nothing to see here. But when I look at the world media around the globe, that's what they're talking about. Item number 2, will the U.S. attack Iran nuclear sites? This is on the tip of when you're looking at the world news, what everyone is talking about. With just 17 days left in his presidency, Biden should be the lame duck president he has been for the past 4 years, licking on an ice cream cone. But instead, he is meeting with his U.S. National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, who has presented the president with options for a potential U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear sites. Yes, this is what the conversation has been over at the White House right now, and which is something I've been talking to you guys about. If you go and look at the history on Twitter for me, I've been telling you Donald Trump is going to inherit chaos. I'm not trying to prophesy, trying to put anything out there in the ethos, but I'm paying attention to what's going on around the world. And right before we go to break, I just had to bring this to you guys right now. Bill Gates is at it again. Remember in 2020, this was the man who was saying he wants to blacken out the sun. Yeah. So now he has funded researchers who have turned mosquitoes. You won't believe this. He has turned mosquitoes into flying syringes. You heard me. He has turned mosquitoes into flying syringes to deliver vaccines. They have genetically modified. Can't even get the words out. It's so ridiculous. But Bill Gates has funded the research that has now genetically modified mosquitoes into what they are calling flying vaccinators. You heard it. They have tested this on humans to inoculate them, what they're saying right now, for malaria. But can you just think back a little bit? What we just lived through these past 4 years, specifically in 2020, 2021, 2022, when our government even was trying to force people to do what they wanted to do, to inject themselves with, right now we're beginning to realize that it's a lot of foreign matter in these jabs that people have taken. Listen, we're getting ready to take a break. On the other side, I'll be right back. Here's the call-in number, 855-839-1210, 855-839-1210. Call me. I'm so excited. Thank you. See y'all on the other side. What? Come on with it. That's all you got. Here we are. This is Kathy Barnette, your weekend host of the Kathy Barnette Show here at 1210 WPHT. Give me a call. I want to hear from you. 855-839-1210, 855-839-1210. Minnie, I see you out there on YouTube. You said Bill Gates is a nut. Yes, he is. I just wanted to acknowledge that sentiment out there, Minnie. Hey, listen, so I'm going to pivot now, bringing it back to right here, what we're living with right now. Who would have ever thought that coming out of 2024 into 2025, the conversation that would be on the tip of my tongue and so many others would be about H1B visas. But this conversation is so much bigger than to cap or not to cap, to have caps on our country, immigration, those who can come in or not. The real question, if you dig real deep to get to the meaning of what people are really talking about here, it is, I believe, it's the question, and I think it's a very valid question. Who are we as a nation, and do we have the right, we meaning the citizens of this nation, do we have the right to participate in the conversation about who we are as a country? Do people like you and I, the ones who made Donald Trump relevant, do we have the right to participate in what kind of country we want to be and who we want to come in and how many we want to come in? Or should we just all shut up, sit down, and let the tech bros have it? Let corporations define who we are? Are we just widgets, nuts, and bolts? Is America nothing more than a corporation's bottom line, and everything we do in this country should be done through the lens of how does it impact my bottom line as a corporation? Or is America personal? Is it my home? And do I get to have a voice in all of this conversation? And so I thought no one better to have this conversation with than my good friend, Batya Ungar-Sargon. She is the deputy opinion editor at Newsweek. She's the author of Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. I brought her on. This is the conversation that we had. Hit it.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. I am a massive Kathy stan. OG Kathy. You know, I learned about you from Steve Bannon because he would have you on again and again and again. And I have to say, I think for me, that was maybe one of the sort of, you know, not first, but one of the moments where I really started to understand what MAGA really was. And it was when you said, you know, this movement is bigger than one man, and just the work that you and Steve were doing. I would come back to those conversations, and I really think that is what taught me what this movement was about and made me feel like, oh yeah, this is the movement worth fighting for. So thank you so much for everything that you've taught me and for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. No, thank you. You know, and I really didn't. And so let me just ask the question this way. Is that, I mean, you have been one of the people at the forefront of defining what the real issue is concerning this H1B conversation. At times, it feels a little bit more aggressive than a conversation when you have the world's richest man in the world telling people to F themselves in the face, calling us subtards because we're not smart enough to be retarded, so we're subtarded. And here you are out there swiping past all of the ad hominems to help people understand what these billionaires, these, you know, Silicon Valley tech bros, what are they really advocating for? And I saw no one out there in Twitterdom and other places articulating what is really what the other side is really asking the American people, and sometimes not even asking, just kind of demanding the American people do. So I wanted you to come on and help us to understand what is really their ask.
What they are asking is the same thing the woke left was asking on the immigration question. What their position is if you don't stand there and cheer as they sell your children's future out to China and Mexico and India, we will call you racist. We will call you bigoted. We will call you too stupid to compete, to your face, and lazy. And it's the exact same thing. They're calling us the woke right. They're saying we want DEI for white people. It's so ridiculous because, of course, everybody knows that the number one victims in America of mass immigration have been black people. This mass immigration of the last 6 years has resulted in up to a 40% wage decrease for black Americans. And I remember having this fight with the left. They finally kicked me out, but I would stand there and say, hey, we're the left. We're supposed to be on the side of the working class. We're supposed to be on the side of black people. What is this? You're importing millions and millions of people to drive down their wages? And kicked me out, didn't want to hear it, fine. I found a home in the MAGA movement, and suddenly you're seeing the exact same logic coming out of Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and David Sachs and all of these people who are saying, hey, how are we supposed to run a business if we can't import cheap labor to replace Americans who are too stupid and lazy to compete, which they said to our faces. And I think that this is not a side thing. This is the fight. This is the fight worth having because this election was about immigration. It was about whether we are allowed to say, I want to put my people first, black, white, Jewish, Asian, Hispanic, working class Americans. They deserve the American dream. How dare you tell me that I have to cheer as they take those good jobs away from Americans and give them to other people, or you'll call me racist.
And
Give
you
me
did
a break.
And in one of your interviews I saw, you did a wonderful job of connecting the dots because this isn't the first time they asked us to cheer while they take our jobs and give it away to foreigners.
Right. So you remember, back when they were trying to sign NAFTA into law, which was this disastrous trade deal that resulted in 5 million very good middle-class manufacturing jobs being shipped off to China and Mexico to build up their middle class, while our middle class was downwardly mobile and became, sunk in depths of despair. So they said to us, don't worry. We'll teach everybody to code. Everyone will learn to code. They'll join the knowledge industry. They'll get these new skills. Everything will be fine. And now look what they're doing. They're saying, actually, no, we're going to import cheap labor from India to do the coding that we promised you. The whole thing is designed as an upward funnel of wealth from the working class into the elites, people like Elon Musk, the richest man on planet Earth, who fired thousands and thousands of workers last year and is applying for those H1Bs in order to line his pockets with the proceeds of cheap labor so he doesn't have to pay an American a living wage.
Just think about that, the insult of it all. And who would have thought that I thought hell would freeze over before I agree with Bernie Sanders. And yet Bernie Sanders came out this week, again, articulating what the request is, what the ask is, what the position of those of us, the conservative MAGA, is actually what we're asking for. We're not, I don't know any reasonable person who is saying we want to be an isolationist country. We just want white people and that's it to work in this country. I'm a black woman. Clearly, I don't want it to be just about white people. But what I want and what I believe most reasonable people understand is that when we said America first, we meant Americans first. We didn't know we had to say it, but that is what America first really means, is that it's putting Americans and our interests first before we do anything else with immigrants, legal or illegal. And Bernie Sanders put out this report on Tesla that in 2024, they laid off over 4,000 of their workers, but then they went into H1B and requested over almost 3,000 workers for their H1B. So they lay off American workers to the tune of 4,000 people, and then turn around and put in H1B requests for almost 3,000 people. And Bernie put out a article, a letter saying in 2022 and 2023, the top 30 corporations laid off at least 85,000 American workers and then turned around and hired 34,000 H1B guest visas or H1B immigrants to come here and to take those positions. And this is what I saw, and this is what we were talking about at the beginning during Christmas Eve, is that this conversation is not about being an isolationist. It is these people are not the tech bros in Silicon Valley. They're not asking for H1B immigrants to come into the country out of the goodness of their heart. What they're wanting is cheap and compliant labor, but they're crouching it as either you want these people to come in or you're racist.
100%. The whole, we thought you only wanted to control illegal immigrants. It's like, listen.
Oh, so you don't want any immigrants. No, that's not the case.
Right. And labor is like everything else. It adheres to the law of supply and demand. The more you have of something, the cheaper it is. This is a law of nature. If you have more workers, each one is going to be able to ask for less money. That is the whole game. We want Americans to make more money. Like, yes, that is what we want. And they don't want it. And the they is the woke left, the over-credentialed college elites on the woke left, and now the free market and the tech bros and all these people on the right. It turns out the divide is not left versus right. It's the working class and the people who want them to have a middle-class standard of living, and the elites who want them to be poor. And here's my real question for Elon and Vivek. I know what the left wants to happen to American workers. They want to open the border, have a limitless supply of cheap labor, illegal immigrants, tons and tons of H-1Bs, get all of the labor that's still here done by foreigners who work for much less, ship all of manufacturing to China, and then we'll have very rich credentialed elites, poor people, and then everybody who is working class, they want them to live off of welfare. That's the Democrats' model for the economy. So that's terrible. Working class people definitely don't want that. You can't get dignity off of a welfare check. They want work. They want to work. They work incredibly hard, and they want to be able to support their children. My question is, what does Elon Musk think is going to happen to these 4,000 people who he fired to replace with cheap labor from India? Like, what is the right-wing free market version of what should happen to those Americans? And this is what is so outrageous. He feels no obligation whatsoever to the people of the country that made him the richest man on this planet. I mean, what happened to the feeling of we owe something to our fellow Americans? He thinks of America as a sports team or a corporation that needs to make money. He does not understand what a nation is. And a nation is a collection of people who have obligations to each other, who want their neighbor to have a middle-class life, who want their neighbor's children to be playing in a safe neighborhood so my children can go play with them. I mean, like, that is what a nation is, and these guys just have no concept of that. That free market rhino thinking that Trump basically won in order to get rid of is coming back with a bang, Kathy, and we all have to hold the line.
And I'm so grateful. Like, who would have ever thought that the conversation we would be having coming out of 2024 into the new year would be about H-1B visas? But I am so grateful to God because I think this is the conversation. This is the conversation that in times past no one would have been having, but the elites would have been putting all of the widgets in place to make it come about. But somehow it got it leaked out of the bag. The cat, it just went out. Everyone is paying attention. We're like, wait a minute. And I think that this is so much bigger than just about immigration. I think it really goes to what kind of country do we want? And do we, the people, have a role, the right to say what kind of country we want to live in? Do we want a nation that is, because this isn't just about, like one of the arguments that, that several people were saying that Vivek included was, well, if America first means America win, and we need to do things that allows America to win. And I started thinking, wait a minute, isn't America more than just about the bottom line of a corporation's financial statement? America is more in the hearts of many of us than just about widgets, nuts, and bolts. America is personal. And not only that, but it's a culture. It's a set of ideas and beliefs and how we live our lives. And we have to be able to not only say this is who America is, but we have to have the right to be a part of the conversation. And I think a lot of these people on the other side of our argument was trying to say we don't even have a right to show up and have the discussion.
100%. Average people are being crushed out of the conversation. And you're right. I feel grateful to God that this conversation is even happening. And what I would say to the right is, as you pointed out, Kathy, Bernie Sanders is saying things that on his side are unsayable. And when I pointed this out, people on Twitter are saying, oh, well, Bernie Sanders, don't listen to anything he says. Look at this, look at that, he said, look at that, he said. Listen, you're right. Bernie had he was very against open borders in 2015. When he ran again in 2020, he had to join the left with their open borders shtick. He's now trying to come back. Don't punish somebody for seeing the light. Don't make fun of somebody for seeing the light. I was once woke, okay? It took me a while to figure out what the truth of the situation was. Welcome people from the left with open arms who are saying, hey, you know what? We also want to get back into the game of supporting the working class. We also want a piece of this. Like, we're going to join hands with you. We also want to talk about restricting immigration, restricting H1Bs, closing the border. There's going to be some lefties who are going to start to realize, like, now is the moment for them to get off that sinking ship. And I would just urge people on the right, like, make allies with these people. We don't have to always remind everybody of every stupid thing that they said in the past. I myself have said a lot of really stupid things. And, this is the moment for us to really come together as Americans. I think that's what the MAGA movement was really about. It was about uniting around the values of this great nation and each other. And this could be a real unifying moment if we have the heart to do that.
I love it. I love it. I agree with all of it. Thank you so much, Batya, for being out here in the fight and being very vocal, allowing your voice to be heard. You articulate our values so well, and I'm grateful to have. You are, like myself and so many others, we are an example of American excellence. And so when some say America is lazy and too stupid, I look at the people who I know and I see you're out there fighting, and I'm very grateful that you're in the fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. God bless you. You are one of the leaders who I admire most in this country at this time. So thank you for everything. God bless.
Oh, thank you, Batya. Blessing. Yeah. As you can see, this conversation is so much bigger than the topic most of us are having, and whether it's around immigration or whether it's around people being racist or not, or an isolationist or not. But I do believe, I agree with Batya, that this is the conversation we should be having. This isn't a side conversation. This is the conversation. We're going to continue this with Dr. Corey DeAngelis, who will be on with me in a few moments. Here's the number, 855-839-1210, 855-839-1210. If you want to be a part of the conversation, jump in with me. Yes, we're going to keep on walking all the way through 2025 because we have some place to go. We have some place to go. We have some place to be. I want you to stay encouraged no matter how crazy things get. And I do believe there's going to be a lot of chaos. We've already seen it. We weren't even 48 hours into the new year, and we already have terrorist attacks on top of terrorist attacks, and we will see. I'm just being very, very prayerful. Minnie, you like my pink cell phone case? Thank you very much. Or my pink cell phone stand. Yes. So listen, guys, here's the number, 855-839-1210, 855-839-1210. I am hopeful that I can stop having this conversation about H1B visas. I am hopeful that I can pivot and start talking about other things. But every time I get ready to talk about something else, somebody tweets something, Elon tweets something, one of the other minions tweets something, or I'm listening to what's being talked about across the globe, and people are weighing in on this issue. And most people are around the world is trying to make this about, oh, see those MAGA people, they're racist. But again, we're going to have to learn how to focus. That's one of the many lessons I've learned over the years, being, sticking my big toe into the world of politics, is that you're over the target when people come out within 3 seconds of you making a statement and they're calling you a racist or they're, using some other ad hominems like you're a subtard or something of that nature. That's when you're over the target. And it is at that moment that I've learned I have to really focus. Swipe past the ad hominems and just focus, right? I'm not following some red herring. You're not going to get me off topic and start talking about, oh, no, see, I'm not racist. Some of my best friends are Indians. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not having that conversation with people. I understand what the conversation is really about. And I believe the conversation is really about, who are we as a nation? And do I have the right to participate in that conversation of who I want in this country, who I don't want in this country, what kind of careers we want to have in this country? Should my son, who is in college studying industrial engineering, when he comes out and start walking around with his resume, should it be okay that he has to compete with the world for an American job? Are we being selfish? I think those are very reasonable questions, and they demand us to talk about it. And so I'm talking about it. I am hopeful, though, that we can stop talking about it at some point. There's a lot of other things to talk about. But I want to make sure that as we pivot from this news source and start talking about other things, that we understand what people are really asking. These CEOs of these very large companies, they are not talking about bringing in the world to do these jobs because out of the goodness of their heart. No, it's all about the bottom line to them. And and I love when Batya talked about, because we tend to have the memory of a goldfish. We forget what happens just 10 minutes ago. But if you can remember the conversation around NAFTA, the whole conversation was, listen, we're going to take these good middle income jobs, manufacturing jobs, and we're going to export them around the globe to these third world countries to build up their middle class. And if you don't like it, you're racist. Right? And a lot of people acquiesce and kowtow down to that and said, okay, well, we're going to just let all of our manufacturing facilities go around the world. And somehow that's going to benefit me here in America, because what they promised was, well, we're going to take away these middle income jobs, these manufacturing jobs, and we're going to export them around the world. But what we're going to do is we're going to retrain all of these people. You're going to be able to do the information jobs. We're going to go from these middle income jobs to these white collar jobs. Don't worry, that's what we're going to do. Well, now we're at the point of these white collar jobs, and we're like, okay, well, I'm ready for this white collar job. And they're like, oh, no, see. You're too stupid or too lazy for the white collar job. We're not going to export those jobs. Instead, we're going to import the world to come in and do those jobs. So what jobs am I going to have? Well, welfare or something of that nature. Okay. So with that, so that's the conversation that we're having now. Unlike most Republicans, and me included in this conversation, Republicans are real good about identifying the problem and pitching tents at the problem and never get beyond the problem to start finding solutions. So now I want to pivot and bring in Dr. Corey DeAngelis onto the conversation. Hello, Corey. How are you?
Hey, Kathy, doing well. How about you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. I don't know how how much of what I was just talking about, H1B, that you heard.
Yep.
But I think it is, I mean, obviously, I don't agree with the fact that there is a deficiency in America. So therefore, the solution is start importing people. I do agree, however, that there is a lot of hard truths around this conversation of H1B. One of those hard truths that we must contend with is that our culture does not push excellence. We're constantly lowering the bar of expectation. If you can't take the ACT, SAT, well, let's just scrap it all together. If you can't take a test within a confined period of time because you have anxiety or you have ADHD, well, let's just scrap the test or extend the test versus forcing our young people to compete. And so that is a problem. It's one of the main reasons why my husband and I decided to homeschool our kids over 10 years ago, because we saw 10 years ago what most people are just now waking up with. So let me just start the conversation with you. How do we create an American culture that breeds excellence again?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Kathy. Look no further than our government-run factory model school system, where we spend more than any other country on the planet. We spend about $20,000 per student per year in the government-run schools. That's 52% higher than average private school tuition across the country. And we're at the middle of the pack, or even worse when it comes to international assessments. The TIMSS report just came out from 2023 data showing that we lost about 18 points on math since 2019. And we're ranked 24th out of about 50 countries that participated in the exam. And we spend more than just about all those countries. And so the problem is the stranglehold that the teachers unions have over the system, where they exert significant monopoly power. If you live in a certain neighborhood, you have to go to a school just based on where you live. We don't structure anything else that way. We don't say, oh, you have to go to this grocery store because you live here. We don't assign people to other industries. That creates so much problem. If you want to go somewhere else, you basically have to pay twice. You have to pay through the property taxes, and you have to pay out of pocket for private school, or you might even have to move houses if you want to get to a better so-called public school. I like to call them government-run schools. They're not public in any meaningful sense of the word, but that creates so many problems here, where we have only about 1 in 4 kids proficient in reading and proficient in math, and fewer than 1 in 3 proficient in reading. It's a huge problem, and we wouldn't have to import as much talent if we fixed the government-run school system. So I'm thankful that we are making strides in the right direction on school choice, injecting more competition into the system. It's a rising tide that lifts all boats. When parents can vote with their feet, guess what? The school boards aren't going to label you as a domestic terrorist anymore. They're not going to cut your mic off anymore. They're going to have an incentive to listen to you and see you as a partner in the conversation, as opposed to trying to label you as an evil person or an enemy.
I mean, and that really did happen. I love your tweet, your Twitter X, whatever it's called at this moment, because you spend a lot of time exposing these weird and woke practices and individuals and entities, including the school boards, that are directly impacting our children. And you said how much we spend. I was reading one report. I mean, we spend almost $800 billion in this country on education. And I was at my child's school, because now they're in public school, and it was some students who were standing up reading letters that they had written as the senior class was getting ready to graduate. And I was in the back I was beside myself in the fact that these students at a very good school where my kids go, but it's public school, just listening to them try to read and try to remain focused. And I'm cringing the whole time. The number of times they go, yeah, like, I'm like, what are we producing? So that's the hard truth. We really do have a problem. I was reading this new report that just came out, measuring the competitiveness of the United States for our children from K through 12, and we're ranked now 12th in 2024 after ranking number 1 in 2022? How do you spend $800 billion a year across the nation, and you go from ranking number 1 in 2022 to now ranking number 12 just 2 years later? How does that happen?
And that's just the K through 12 level. If you include higher education, taxpayers spend over $1 trillion every single year on our education system in this country. It's a total waste of money, and taxpayers aren't getting their money's worth. And I think part of the problem here is the school closures that were induced by the teachers unions during the COVID era. They held children's education hostage to secure ransom payments from taxpayers. If you look at the trends in places like Sweden, they kept their schools open. They jumped in the rankings by 9 points. You look at places like Poland, they kept their schools open longer, and they jumped in their test scores by about 20 points, according to the latest TIMSS assessment for fourth grade math students. And so, look, a lot of other countries also have more school choice than us. A lot of people point to Finland as a leader in education. Well, they have nationwide school choice. The good news is President Trump has said he would sign the Educational Choice for Children Act, a nationwide school choice initiative. It's a tax credit. It's not federal dollars. You get to keep more of your own money and don't have to hand it over to the government. And you can use it for K through 12 education expenses. That would supercharge the school choice revolution that's already happening in red states. And it would also expand educational opportunities to families who happen to live in blue states like California and New York, which are currently controlled by the teachers unions and the Democrat Party, which is basically has an incestuous relationship with the teachers unions, where 99.9% of the campaign contributions from the American Federation of Teachers went to Democrats in 2024. It's a money laundering operation. It ought to be illegal, and that's the only reason why Democrats in office vote against school choice, having the money follow the child. It's because they're only listening to the special interest. They're not listening to the constituents who actually put them in office, the parents and their children. But the good news is, again, Trump has said he would sign that bill. And also, red states are moving the ball forward. We have 12 red states that have passed school choice in a universal way in the past 3 years alone, because guess what? The teachers unions closed the schools starting in 2020 and kept them closed as long as possible. They were even saying it was racist to reopen schools. It was ridiculous what they were doing. But parents got to see what was happening in the classroom. And parents, especially conservative parents, started to see that too many people in the government-run school system see that institution as a way to control the minds of other people's children with leftist, liberal indoctrination, as opposed to education. So conservative parents are holding politicians accountable. And guess what? Trump won the parent vote by 9 points this year, according to exit polls. That was a 15-point shift to the right since 2020. The GOP has become the parents' party, and that gives me optimism going forward.
So is the problem just the unions? If we did away with the unions, and I guess the unions are so powerful because of the Department of Education. So if I go upstream, if we got rid of the Department of Education, which sends a lot of our money to these unions, will that solve the problem?
That'll help, and we should abolish the Department of Education. It's an unconstitutional waste of time and money. We've spent about $2 trillion since its inception. It hasn't done anything to close achievement gaps like it intended to do. It was a payoff by Jimmy Carter in 1979 to the teachers unions, and we should get rid of it. It's the word education is not in the U.S. Constitution. We can send that money back to the states. The money doesn't have to disappear. We could just have more local control. Each state has its own education department already. We don't need another one. We don't need the 4,400 useless bureaucrats in D.C. that happen to work for the Department of Education today. Let's get rid of it. And Trump campaigned on that. And we have a trifecta for Republicans going into 2025. So the voters want this. It's on the Republican Party platform. And I don't think that's sufficient. I think it's a good step in the right direction. Send that money back to the states. There's a bill in Congress right now to do that by Mike Rounds, a senator, a Republican from South Dakota. But we also have these local education bureaucracies that still have monopoly power, where you're assigned to the school based on where you live. So you still need school choice. You can't just abolish the department. You need to do that, plus have the money follow the child, So you have bottom-up accountability so that the school boards listen to you. And guess what? When they listen to you, you might not have to leave. So when you have school choice, almost counterintuitively, you're less likely to have to exercise that choice because you have more agency, you have more power in the relationship. And that's just another side benefit of having the money follow the child.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, can you hold one moment and I'm going to bring you back on the other side of this break?
Yep, sounds great.
Awesome. Okay, guys, you're listening to my new show, The Kathy Barnette Show. I am the weekend host here at 1210 WPHT. See you on the other side. Hello, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, most of the mid-Atlantic states. You're listening into The Kathy Barnette Show. I am Kathy Barnette. If you guys want to call in, the number is 855-839-1210. On the line with me is Dr. Corey DeAngelis. He is the Senior Fellow, American Culture Project Executive Director, and Educational Freedom Institute. What do you do with the Educational Freedom Institute, Corey?
We fight to fund students, not systems. So having the money follow the child, it's school choice, and we're having a lot of victories. We're winning so much, I'm almost getting tired of winning, Kathy. We've had 12 states
No such thing,
go
Corey,
universal.
no
on
such
school.
thing.
Exactly. We're not there yet. We're not done yet. We still have to get school choice in the blue states like California and New York. That'll be a heavier lift.
Well, you know what? I really appreciate what you're doing. It's very informative, and and sometimes out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people. And so it's really good when you're putting those stories out there on Twitter. What is your Twitter handle so people can go and see you there?
It's at DeAngelis Corey, just my last name, first name.
Yes, absolutely. And it just kind of reminds us why we're in this fight and why we need to be so vigilant. Let me double click on what you were saying about school choice, because I do believe that is a part, not the whole answer, but a significant move into putting education back into the hands of the parents versus these entities who think they love our children more than we do. That's the most astounding part of all of this when you talk to the school board executives and some of the others. They speak to you as a parent as if they love your child more than you love your child. They speak as though they have your child's best interest in mind more so than you do. And I love being able to remind them that my child belongs to me and not them. But what's interesting is that back in the day, just, I don't know, 8 years ago, when you would have the conversation about school choice, most people relegated that conversation to inner city kids, right? Like they are the ones who need school choice. And now that conversation has spread beyond out of the inner cities, and it has crossed over into suburbia. Of people saying, wait a minute, and it's not because of the poverty and the crime necessarily, but it's a woke virus that is just as aggressive as your child having to walk through metal detectors just to get into their school. Is just as aggressive, and we're finding that it's just as detrimental on the health and well-being of our children.
That's exactly right. Pre-COVID, we didn't have as much movement on the school choice front. We had little incremental victories here and there, but now we've gone from 0 to 100 real quick on the issue after families saw what was happening in the classroom. Because before, you're right, the argument was more about there are kids in objectively failing schools based on math and reading test scores. Before, people thought that their public schools were fine. Parents thought based on their math and reading test scores, okay, my kid's in an A-rated school, I don't have as much to worry about. But since we've seen the curriculum misalignment with families' values through critical race theory and gender ideology being injected into the classroom, parents have pushed back and have been mobilized all across the ideological spectrum, all across the income spectrum. The same parents who thought their kids were doing okay in that A-rated public school started to say, wait a minute, there's something else going on here that's arguably more important than anything that could be captured by a standardized test score, which is whether the school's curriculum aligns with your values. And Vodi Bakum said it best: we cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans. Well, the good news is the parents aren't surprised anymore. They're pissed off. They've woken up. They're never going back to sleep. and they're holding politicians accountable. And that's the real magic here, is if you can make your voices heard, if you can lock arms with other parents and become a new interest group of sorts, you can become more powerful than the teachers unions because you care about your kids more than anybody else. Just like you said, that school board member doesn't care about your kid more than you. They don't have their best interest in mind, and they're not going to fight as hard. So, and you also outnumber school board members and teachers. So the Moms for Liberty has been a great group to kind of get parents to lock arms together and become politically active. And that is how you make real change happen. You got to make your voices heard, and you have to rally together. We can win this fight, and a lot of states have shown that when you fight together, we will be victorious.
Now, in my book, Nothing to Lose, Everything to Gain, Being Black and Conservative in America, one of the premises I made was that what we see happening in predominantly Black communities is going to spill out and start impacting the rest of the nation. And that's exactly what I said earlier, and that's exactly what we're talking about, and it's exactly what we're experiencing. And my question to you is, even if we abolish the Department of Education, we cripple the power of the union, and we implement school choice, it just seems like there is still this intentional race to the bottom of degrading and demoralizing our children and taking away our edge. How do we articulate that? How do we combat that?
Yeah, none of these are silver bullets, and you can't just fight for one and not the other things. But the more of these policies that we get enacted, abolishing the department, sending education back to the states, having more local control, allowing families to direct the upbringing of their children and allocate the funding to the school of their choosing, those are all steps in the right direction, but they are not perfect solutions. But they will increase the likelihood that parents become involved more so in their kids' education. You can't take away family involvement. You can't take that out of the equation. And I would argue that if families have more of a say in their kids' education, if they're not relegated by zip code to a failing school, if that money can follow the child, parents who might have felt like that no matter how hard they tried, they weren't going to be able to really have a huge impact on the positive impact on their kids' education. Now they're going to say, hey, I have real leverage here. I can take that funding. Now I can afford a private school. Maybe I'll research those options now. And so another side benefit of these policies, especially school choice, is that it gives families more confidence, and it gives them it's not going to work magic for everybody, but the families on the margin will be more likely to be involved in their kids' education. And I think that's a really important part of the puzzle that gets lost in a lot of the conversations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Corey DeAngelis, Senior Fellow, American Culture Project, Executive Director there. Thank you so very much for weighing in on this conversation. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Good to talk to you.
Yes, to everyone else, go to KathyBarnette.com. You can find me there. You can also find me on Twitter at Kathy for Truth. Blessings. Y'all take care of yourselves. Talk to you soon. Woo! Step 2, step 2, step 3.